Real Country 1430 AM and 107.3 FM WRDN. Good morning. I'm Brian Winnekins. Joining us this morning, Tyler Mesalk. He is the Aquatic Invasive Species Coordinator with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. And we are going to talk a little bit about, unfortunately, the arrival of some invasive carp here in Western Wisconsin. Tyler, good morning, and thank you for joining us. I guess first, it's the silver carp that has been found.
Yep, specifically silver carp was what was detected through the tagged fish that acoustic receivers hit at that point in time in both the Chippewa and Black Rivers.
And so, when did the DNR find out about this?
So we kind of had anecdotal reports, kind of starting early July timeframe about some odd jumping fish at that point, which could be a multitude of various species at that point. But just general curiosity, just because kind of colors that are being described were that of silver carp specifically. So we went out, whether it was fisheries program staff or individuals like myself in our water resource program out of the Eau Claire office, to try to see if we could observe what the suspected reports possibly were and maybe see if the reports were maybe on the right track or possibly maybe just a native fish at that point that someone was curious about, which can happen. And then based upon that, we spent a fair amount of time in between other monitoring efforts just as needed that was scheduled previously prior to this occurring. And spending an hour here or 2 hours here observing near the dam to try to see if we could find anything or see anything. And then fishery staff also went out within kind of their scheduling that they already had previously on the Chippewa River, south of the Eau Claire Dells Dam, to see if they could maybe try to retrieve a physical specimen at that point, based upon the assumption that it might have been a silver carp. We're not able to physically get anything, hence kind of the reliance on the acoustic receivers, because if anything that was previously tagged would come up and down, it would get a hit on those receivers, and we would know maybe the ID of the fish, specific species, and then maybe just some basic history of maybe where the fish was tagged at that point. The one that was pinged down the Eau Claire River was initially tagged down in Davenport, Iowa, about 5 years ago by the Federal Natural Resource Agency. So that's how we definitely knew from a confirmation perspective that it was a silver carp.
So Tyler, do we know how bad this might be of an infestation?
So at this point, we don't have any evidence regarding any sort of reproduction taking place, just due to the hits being very minimal and same fish over time. Overall abundance is relatively low, and possibly they may have migrated already out of the Black River and the Chippewa Rivers for all we know, just because we haven't gotten any updated hits in the recent future since those receivers were pulled in later September at that point. So for all we know, they may actually be outside of the system at this point, or if they are currently present, they're relatively low abundance at this point.
Talking with Tyler Mesalk. He is Aquatic Invasive Species Coordinator of the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources about the discovery of the silver carp, the invasive silver carp in the Chippewa, lower Chippewa and Black Rivers recently. So, Tyler, if this would become a worse situation, what does it mean for the native fish in both rivers?
So at this point, it's hard to say what densities may or may not be in the future, largely due to we have no evidence of reproduction at that point in time. So it's all kind of looking at previous situations, maybe in southern US, what maybe has occurred there, and understanding those scenarios. But we cannot say that will or will not occur in the Chippewa River at that point. It's very much abundance related. And if low abundances are there, impacts in theory would possibly be less, but we cannot say with any definitive answers at this point, just because we have no overall sampling due to this being relatively new, and we haven't been able to physically capture any specimens through regular sampling at this point. So we can't gauge impacts both now and in the future. Looking at some literature review, we've seen there's some overlap from maybe gizzard shad and silver carp, but gizzard shad is relatively low density in the Chippewa River system. And at that point, it's hard to say anything else that may possibly have any impact.
So Tyler, okay, I'm out fishing. How will I know I've caught one of these? And if I do catch one, what do I do then?
Okay, so biggest thing for individuals that are out fishing, your general recreationists, being aware of the physical characteristics of what the species looks like is a big one. And understanding that if you have questions, generally there, as long as you got your legal licenses and you're curious about it, feel free to take a photo. Maybe a local warden is currently in the area or available. We do have a DNR tip line as well that folks can reach out to for general inquiries or other situations. Just depending upon time frame, they can get a hold of me or other fishery staff within their geographic residence at that point, to maybe confirm, hey, I've got this species of fish. I have no idea what it is. Can you confirm or deny what it may or may not be at that point? So if it's confirmed that it's not an invasive silver carp, then at that point, maybe they can go ahead and release it out at that point in time. It could just be a native buffalo for all we know. If it is indeed confirmed silver carp or another invasive carp of some kind, we are required through NR40, which is our invasive species code, to go ahead and euthanize and then bring that deceased animal to a local DNR office, depending upon where you're located at that point. People are not legally allowed to carry that specimen live and transport it outside of the body of water at that point in time. So that would be my recommendation. And then folks also can't take that and place it somewhere else on maybe a completely new water body at that point. So if you got a question on it, we as DNR staff are available. Feel free to maybe reach out to whoever is the respective individual based upon where you're located. And then we'll get back to you in a prompt manner at that point to say, okay, yes, it's this species, or yes, it is indeed silver carp. Please bring it in for confirmation and let us know where you caught it so we can continue tracking kind of where the species is moving around and presence absence portion of it too, because that all helps us as well to figure out how many people are seeing stuff, maybe the overall abundance at that point, and try to maybe keep track of what's being seen on the landscape.
So if I catch one of these, I'm going to probably have questions right away just because it's silver, hence the name silver carp.
Yep.
Does it now is this the one that jumped? I've seen videos of this where when a river's really infested with these things, you're going down the river and there's fish jumping all over the place. They actually are jumping into the boat, it seems like. Is that what we're talking about here?
Yep, this is the species that has been known to go ahead and jump out through disturbances like boating on a waterway.
And finally, Tyler, if let's say down the road, okay, right now we really don't know, but what's the plan if all of a sudden you start getting phone calls, the warden the warden here in Pepin County calls you up and says, Tyler, I just had 6 people catch one of these things. What will the DNR do then?
So at that point, trying to keep track of it as well. I know some DNR staff, along with federal agencies, and with Minnesota, we do what's called the MUM, which is a small removal effort as well as kind of a tagging effort that's happened on the Mississippi River, trying to figure out maybe where these fish are going, where they're migrating to see specifically where they might possibly be, and would allow us to kind of see overall changes over time at that point. So from a DNR perspective, it would be a lot of understanding where the fish actually is the reproduction taking place, and then discussing maybe what we can do from a monitoring perspective to try to gauge maybe what effects we may see, because ultimately no system between the Mississippi River and the Chippewa, they're not exact apples to apples, so to speak. So maybe what we might see in the Chippewa River would be different than the Miss, and then vice versa at that point in time as well. So try to understand maybe what actually is taking place so we can then find a trend of, okay, the species is or is not present, or it's in this abundance, and we can kind of see what changes there would be, because no system is the same. So trying to create some data that we can ultimately use and educate the public for.
And there's really no way to eradicate this. So like down south in some of these rivers where it's been infested, there's it's impossible to eradicate, correct?
At this point, with the current technologies that are available, eradication is really costly and labor intensive, especially. So it's very limiting from that aspect of it as well. So it's just what we have available at this point in time. There's outside of manual removal and commercial fishing primarily is the main removal methods. We just don't have anything technologically based at this point to help with management at that point. We mean, there's acoustic receivers out there or acoustics that are used from a deterrent standpoint, to try to keep them away from certain areas. I know electric berries have been discussed in the past. I think they've looked at doing kind of adding some sort of bubbling within a water body, CO2 based, as well as a topic to use as a deterrent. But as far as an eradication method, that it's not what they are.
That is Tyler Mesalk. He's an aquatic invasive species specialist with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. You're listening to WRDN.